Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, you don't like your boyfriend seeing me braless in the dorm? Then he won't. If you are so amazing, this shouldn't be a problem. Take my burger? Two can play that game. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. You don't like your boyfriend seeing me braless in the dorm? Then he won't. I live in a college dorm on an all-female floor. I usually wear a bra if leaving the dorm building, but I'm not going to put on a bra under my shirt just to walk down the hall to the bathroom. A few days ago, I left my room and walked 10 yards down the hall to the water fountain, refilled my water bottle, and went back to my room. I was wearing a white tank top and no bra. The tank top was fitted but not see-through, so you could only see the outline of my nips. There was a small group of people hanging out in the hall outside a few of the rooms, but I didn't think much of it, until around half an hour later, when I got a knock on the door from one of the girls I'd seen in the hall. She said something to the effect of, "Hey, so sorry to ask you this, but if you go out into the hall again, could you put a bra on? My boyfriend's out there and he was staring a little, so..." I'm super non-confrontational, so I was like, "Yeah, sure, sorry about that," and for the rest of that night, anytime I left my room I put a bra or sweater on. And that was the end of it. Or so I thought. The next day, my roommate told me she'd overheard the girl telling a few of her friends about the incident while in the bathroom. She said the girl was making it sound like I'd been purposely trying to seduce her boyfriend, wearing basically nothing, taking my time at the water fountain, posing to push out my tits, the whole works. When she left the bathroom, my roommate said the girl was actually acting it out at the water fountain, pretending to be me. That night, I passed the girl and some of her friends on my way to go brush my teeth. I wasn't wearing a bra, I was already in pajamas. The girl looked pointedly down at my chest and all of them started giggling. But the last straw was when the entire dorm got an email from the RA yesterday saying she'd gotten some anonymous complaints about people dressing inappropriately in the hallways and asking that we all just make sure we're keeping things covered up. So here's where I got my petty little revenge. I knew that the girl's boyfriend doesn't go to college here. The girl and I were in the same orientation group and chatted a bit back then. I also knew that due to the pandemic, we aren't allowed to have non-student/family guests in the dorms this year. So I used the same anonymous complaint form to issue a complaint about people bringing their off-campus boyfriends into our dorm and them not wearing a mask. Masks are mandatory in the hallways, although not frequently enforced. This morning, the RA emailed again saying that due to anonymous complaints, they'd be enforcing the no off-campus guests rule by checking IDs of unfamiliar guests to make sure they were students from then on. Really, this girl should be thanking me. If she was concerned about her boyfriend seeing the vague outline of my tits in the dorm hallways, she no longer needs to worry. If you are so amazing, this shouldn't be a problem. So this happened a few years ago. I was doing my doctoral studies in a research lab at the time. Since this is an academic setting, things run a bit differently from a regular work setting, but not by much. We got a new postdoc from abroad, this guy, Bob, who at first seemed really nice. This was his second round of postdoc. To those who don't know, after completing your doctoral studies you can continue working in research labs while having your paycheck comes from periodic grants rather than having it come from an institution. It is basically like a scholarship rather than a paycheck, and usually you go on one round of postdoc at a lab before trying to get a tenure, permanent head of lab position, at a research institution. While it is not uncommon to do more than one round, it does mean that you were not good enough, and lucky enough, to get a tenure. So Bob comes to the lab and begins telling us how successful he was at his previous lab, how his boss liked him a lot, how everyone came to him asking for advice and guidance, how knowledgeable he is in all things concerning our field, how he had his own office, how his boss would invite him to dinner and pay for him, etc. Well, we are all a skeptical bunch who lives in a country where respect is something you earn and not entitled to, and decorum is non-existent. I think that in my country the only person anyone calls Mrd is the Prime Minister, and even that is only to his face. So you get how unimpressed we all were by this talk, and how little effect it had on us. A quick chat with friends of friends from his former institute revealed that this guy was embellishing the truth quite a bit. Yes, B had his own room, but only because most students had. Yes, the boss took him to dinner and paid for it, together with the rest of the lab. You get the idea. I in particular hated Bob as he got me into an uncomfortable position with the boss. The boss was doing a sabbatical year abroad and I continued working as usual in his absence. I am saying that I continued because many people took advantage of the boss's absence to come late and leave early. Myself, the lab manager and another research associate were the only ones whose attendance didn't really change. Like I said, this is the academia, so people would still get paid even if they didn't come in as usual. But no one abused this system more than Bob. The guy was a no-show for most of a year. However, he managed to get away with it by claiming that he was coming in during the weekend since he liked to work when no one was around and he didn't need to wait in line to use some device or utility. Only problem is, I had a ton of work to do and no life to live, so I would also come in on the weekends. And not for a little bit, no. I had a lengthy, repetitive procedure I needed to carry out that I simply had no time for during normal workdays. And so the boss would call me to verify if Bob was coming in on the weekends as he was saying, which I hated. I was once outcast due to similar circumstances in HS, which caused me a lot of mental stress. I knew that I'm a terrible liar and couldn't lie to the boss, but also knew that the truth will put me on a path to conflict with Bob. I didn't like being in that position, and once Bob realized that I was telling on him to the boss, he got pissed and called me a liar, claiming that I was obviously not in while he was, even though I would spend 11 to 6 at the lab. It didn't matter that my lab mates and lab manager believed me, what mattered more was the situation I was in, which would have been avoided had Bob bothered to come at least once a week. The boss didn't take anyone's side and was pretty oblivious to Bob calling me a liar. Well, Bob was not only a lazy liar, he was also an incompetent lazy liar. Dude didn't know how to do stuff that our undergrad workers did. And that put me in a bind when I came to distribute tasks in the lab. Since this is academia, and our lab didn't have a lot of money, we tended to do most of the prep work, like preparing equipment and mixing chemicals etc., in-house rather than outsource it. And I was in charge of distributing these different tasks between the lab members. Usually I would task someone with something based on their ability to carry out said task. For example, I would give easier things to the new people in the lab, or the less knowledgeable ones, while things that required precision or care I'd give to the seasoned researchers. And usually, things that were simple to do were repetitive, boring and tedious processes that required more brawn than brain. If they were not, they usually required interaction with faculty maintenance crew, and this required one to speak the local language, which Bob obviously didn't. We were 5 people, me and Bob. And we had 16 tasks in the lab. I divided the tasks between all the people, 2 per person, and was left with 6. 2 were mine ever since I entered the lab, and I was reluctant to give them away as they were somewhat sensitive and needed to be carried out with care. That left 4, all were annoying, time-consuming, sweat-inducing tasks. Now, you can probably see where this was going, but still, bear with me. I, of course, could have been the bigger person and take on an additional task, but why would I? In terms of rank, lazy unreliable Bob outranked me, which he constantly reminded me of. It didn't matter that he was so unreliable that task distribution was delegated to someone his junior, all that mattered to him was that he was my senior. So I gave all 4 remaining tasks to Bob. We had a meeting with our boss via Skype, during which I announced the new distribution of tasks. When I got to Bob, I mentioned his 4 tasks and of course, he was furious. He loudly demanded to know why everyone got 2 tasks, but he got 4. So I got a big smile on and said, "Why, just the other day you told me how proficient you were in doing X." I figured that a senior postdoc such as yourself will be able to do those tasks much quicker and in a more efficient way than the newbies. My lab members were all suddenly sporting evil grins, and the lab manager merely said blandly, "Sounds reasonable enough." Anyone has anything else to say? Of course, when said in front of the boss and with the support of the lab manager, who also hated Bob, Bob could not protest. Bob was tasked with these 4 tasks until he left us. And we all made sure to liberally use the equipment he was responsible for. Take my burger? 2 can play that game. The setup. When I was a kid in junior high, I remember the game Snatchies, where someone would snatch your food and claim it as their own. I wasn't having it and ended up protected because I just never played it and they never had the opportunity. The offense. The day I got caught slippin' was when a kid I'll call Dennis, not his real name, called Snatchies with a huge grin on his face and grabbed my hamburger from my lunch tray. I was livid. You don't play with someone's food, but I got a twinkle in my eye and waited. I wouldn't do anything, yet. I was hell-bent on getting it back at the most opportune time. We were the only ones at the table, so it was no trouble being taller than Dennis to actually get the burger back. He ate his own burger nonchalantly and completely forgot about anything as I started eating, thinking he was safe. The petty revenge. Having finished his burger and almost ready to reach for mine, I got up, yelled Snatchies with the most venomous tone I could muster, grabbed it and bit into it right in front of him. He was pissed, but there was nothing he could do about it. He sat there, deflated as I smiled and ate my lunch with a bigger grin than the one he showed me at the beginning of lunch. It was one of few acts of petty revenge in school that I was proud of. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.